speak to. Robert Gutsche is a senior lecturer at Lancaster University. We have Rob Arlett, who's in Delaware. He is Donald Trump's campaign chair in that state. It's going to become confusing for me. We've got Robert and we've got Rob. Okay, let's start with Rob Arlett. Rob, give me the case for the defense. Should America's international allies be worried about 4 more years of Donald Trump?
I would say no. I think that our international allies should be excited that President Trump is going to very likely get reelected. I think he's been a champion of the American people. I think he's been a champion of peace and prosperity, truly for around the world. And he's not somebody who wants to continue to go into other countries and control them. I think he's looking to other leaders to be leaders of their own countries, as we have seen these last 3.5, almost 4 years now with President Trump's legacy these last, almost 4 years. So I think our allies are very excited. Many of them, perhaps not China, perhaps some that have been held accountable these last 4+ years. And so I think that it's going to be a fun ride these next, couple of months as we head towards November 3rd. But we look forward to having President Trump reelected and continuing on with the legacy, continuing on with the successes here in America and around the world.
Robert, would you go with that? I mean, because there are so many analyses that say that Donald Trump has damaged the country's standing internationally.
Well, certainly, I think if he's taken any aggression that the U.S. might have abroad, he's certainly redirected that domestically. So I certainly think that, yeah, he does look like he wants to make America whatever he wants it to be again. And that means staying out of some international affairs. But certainly that aggression has been taken to the southern border of the United States, to urban populations, to Black lives, through police and through federal agencies. And National Guard. So, that aggression that the United States is known for abroad may be laxed a bit, but we're seeing it play out across the country in the place that's supposed to be electing him potentially for another 4 years.
Sure. Okay, gentlemen, let's look, as you're insisting on looking at the domestic situation. And I'm not going to give you any excuses, because rather than me giving you the arguments, I'm going to take the arguments presented by one American individual about her own country. Her name is Bryn Tannehill. She is a former U.S. Navy helicopter pilot with 3 tours of duty, and she's now a political analyst. This is what she said recently about what's happening in the United States and the dangers of Donald Trump becoming president for another 4 years. She says the courts are being packed with loyalists. Most state legislatures in swing states are gerrymandered beyond belief. The executive branch is gaining unitary power. The Department of Justice is blatantly applying the law to favor the autocrat. Inspector generals are being destroyed. Attorney generals are being replaced. Congress is no longer a check on corruption, as the Senate has been captured by Trump loyalists. This is why 2020 is for all the marbles. That's why we set this discussion up, to talk about how American democracy may be in danger, according to some people in your country. Rob Arlett?
Well, I believe that President Trump is here to preserve our great country and to preserve our Constitution and to preserve law and order. I think my counterpart here is very flawed in his lens when he thinks that President Trump is the person who's caused the issues in our inner cities. They are all ran by Democrat mayors and Democrat governors. Let's be honest here. President Trump is the law and order president, and the others are not. So let's talk on the records and let's talk on the merits. With regard to the African-American community, President Trump is the person who brought them the highest incomes, the lowest unemployment, more so than Joe Biden had done in 47 years. Joe Biden has been named a racist by his own vice president nominee. So I think let's just cut to the chase that President Trump is the president of law and order and of peace and prosperity, unlike Joe Biden, in my own home state here of Delaware, has destroyed Delaware, has 47 years of a broken record and broken promises. And that's not what we need as a leader in our country, and for that matter, around the world. We know Joe Biden has sold America to the highest bidder around the world, as evidenced in his dealings as vice president. We won't stand for that. We will not vote for that come November. I rest assured the American people are going to be voting for President Trump to make sure he gets reelected and stand firm on the beliefs and convictions of what this great country was founded upon.
Robert Gutsche, does anything that I read out to you from Bryn Tannehill strike true with you in terms of the threat to American democracy as she sees it?
Well, look, I'm an academic, so I'm not taking a particular side here. I mean, I'm looking at history. I'm looking at contemporary times. I'm looking at statements like what you read, which is coming across every day. And for those who've been aware of these things, been coming across at least every day that I've been in academia and when I was a journalist, heard those same stories. I mean, none of this is new. I think our both of us are probably in agreement that Donald Trump's going to win into another election, and that's the larger issue here is what's going on with U.S. society, where this is the type of scene that we think is American, that we think is democratic. Certainly, I don't think Delaware speaks for the majority of Americans. I mean, I think it's a safe haven for corporations, and it tends to not necessarily fit the demographics of those who are being affected by Donald Trump's policies. So I think we're looking at another 4 years with great potential in terms of its likelihood. And we're looking at lives that aren't mattering playing out on the screen right now and being used as campaign fodder for the president to win again. But it takes voters for that. So what does that say about our voters in the United States?
Rob Arlett, what does it say about Republican voters, as you're a Republican? When I was watching the RNC, the National Convention, and some of the language that was coming out of there, I was literally thinking that I'd never heard anything like this in mainstream American politics, talking about Joe Biden wanting to enslave people, the hatred that was coming out, and the fear that was being forced onto people almost about what might happen if Joe Biden becomes president. Don't you, even you as a Republican, feel slightly uneasy sometimes when you hear some of the angry words that Republicans speak?
Well, I think that as Americans, I think we all have our own different various opinions. I think that's kind of what makes America great in many ways, is that we have a focus on the individuality. But I think that the tone out of the RNC convention down in Charlotte was one of very positiveness, to be honest with you. I think some that were calling out on Joe Biden and his record, they should, as I have been doing here in Delaware for around the world, because I think it's really important that we all truly expose Joe Biden and what he's really all about. But I think, again, the American people are people who are very independent, who are striving to be the best that they can possibly become and truly provide for their families. And I think that's going to be the big difference. I think Joe Biden believes that it is the government to the solution of the people. And Donald Trump believes it's the people who need to be empowered to provide for themselves. There is a true big difference between the two. And again, President Trump is about empowering the people. Joe Biden is about empowering the government. That's what November 3rd is all about. It's a big picture, really important election. And I'm confident, again, Donald Trump will be reelected on November 3rd.
Robert Gutsche, I'm glad you said that you're coming at it from an academic point of view, so I won't ask you to express the opinions of the other side. Rather, maybe I could just...
But he should.
Yeah,
I mean, but he should.
Well, let me do that, actually, just in this case, because the question of race relations, what happened outside... You know, what happened outside the White House when Donald Trump was speaking in the gardens of his residence there at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and, you know, the aggression that was shown towards people who were clearly standing still and not really particularly making any trouble. Just generally that kind of action that the president seems to support, sometimes even actively encourages, what we've been seeing from federal troops or whoever these guys in unmarked uniforms have been undertaking in cities like Portland. How much is this now going to prove to be the hurdle that Donald Trump can't overcome, because the numbers showing that he's between 7 to 10 points behind Joe Biden in the polls, and historically someone who's that far behind has never managed to recover in this time. So just from a neutral point of view, again, Robert Gutsche, how do you see November the 3rd?
Well, I mean, this is a very different election than we've had in recent memory, and certainly in terms of putting out platforms, what these two different candidates stand for. And I think it is hard to understand what Joe Biden stands for. And I think he's spent a lot of time staying quiet and hoping that Donald Trump would trip over his own feet. But Donald Trump excels at that. You know, you'll have images of police shooting a black person in the back, and Donald Trump will say he deserved it. Very clear, very plain speak, very much going to fear of that person was going to run into your house and rob you. It's a Joe McCarthy sort of scare tactic of connections between communism and socialism. I mean, these aren't new tactics that are being used. But what's hard is Joe Biden's own problem is Joe Biden, not necessarily in his policies for his voters, but for the degree to which he's speaking up. And we're not seeing them laying out their platforms. This isn't the same sort of election that we've had before. So Joe Biden is going to have to figure out, is he really in with his vice presidential candidate? Are they okay together? And can Joe Biden really speak to people within urban areas that he has slighted in the past based upon his policies? But at the end of the day, this does come down to that fear. It does come down to hatred. It does come down to isolationism. It does come down to American exceptionalism. And it comes down to black versus white, not even to mention the Latino population in the United States. But it's hard for non-white people to look at these images that we can't disregard and say that that's not going to happen to them in another presidency.
Robert Gutsche, we speak to you regularly on TRT World, so I'm sure you'll be with me again in the not too distant future. Rob, you know what? I'm working on the morning of November the 4th. I'm going to ask my producer to get in touch with you. I'd love to have you on. Let's dissect what happened on the night of November the 3rd, if you don't mind. You're going to be very busy before then. But Rob and Robert, thank you so much indeed, both, for joining us on the News Hour.